Hello, Jason. Welcome to WTF, Wholesome Twin-Flame Coaching. How are you doing today?
Doing well, Ronja. How have you been?
I'm all right. Got a bit of a cold, so I'll be coughing a lot probably, but that's all right. So, what are we talking about today? What's our topic?
I believe we're going to kind of transition from the self-love into kind of some boundaries and those aspects that help protect us as we're building up that self-love and really kind of developing and stepping into who we are and what we're here for.
Yeah. Okay, so what's the relationship between self-love and boundaries? What does that have to do with each other?
For me, or at least in my experience, it's kind of it's a form of making sure you're okay and you're in a position where you can grow, you can make progress, and being in a spot where you can realize that sometimes interactions with people aren't necessarily helping you or being as positive as you would hope they would be. I think that's been my big realization is even though I love a person and even though I may want them in my life, it may not be the time, and we may both be at a place of needing to work on ourselves so much that interaction and that communication can actually be hindering in that self-development and that building yourself up to be more compatible with that person or somebody else in the future, whatever the universe may bring there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're specifically referring to twin flames now, and not just any other person that you have to have good boundaries with?
I think it could go both ways. I mean, it's definitely healthy to be observant and be aware of your relationships, I think, and to see, I mean, if you have people in your life or around you that are constantly just bringing in the negative and breathing that negative into you and your relationship, then I think it's wise to kind of have that border, that barrier in there to where you can kind of cut off that communication at least and stay in the positive, at least until you strengthen yourself up enough to where being around some of the negative isn't going to drag you down or put you into that place where you're vibrating a lot more in that negative level, because that's what's being breathed into you and into your conversations, but you can actually experience your own bliss and go inside and realize that connection and nourish it, grow, and not be stuck in the negative junk that we so get sideswiped by so often.
Yeah, but it's one thing to establish healthy boundaries with people that are less close to you, and another thing with your twin flame, because you're so closely interconnected that you always feel each other. So what happens in twin flame relationship when you have not learned in other relationships, let's say friendships that went south or whatever, to actually have good boundaries? What's the danger of being in a twin flame relationship there, not actually knowing your personal boundaries?
Without knowing them, without knowing how, it really puts you in a vulnerable place. It puts you in this place where you're letting somebody else take advantage of you and hurt you in ways that you wouldn't necessarily with somebody else, because you do treasure that relationship with this twin flame and you see it as different and special. So you actually end up making yourself a little more vulnerable than you probably would to just a general relationship or a friendship or something of that sort, because they don't feel as close and it's not to the soul point and that deep heart and soul connection that you would have with that twin flame. So you give them a little more grace sometimes, or you're willing to see a little more, be open a little more, where if they haven't done their work, if they're not in a good place and they're just in that place of kind of they're hurting and they're still not processing their stuff right, you're just kind of getting that backlash of what they're turning through and what's spinning around in them. Whereas if you could just kind of get some of that separation and some of that distance to where maybe you could each work on yourselves and build up a little more, you could come back together a little more healthy instead of beating yourself and each other up in the process, because neither one of you have really dealt with anything other than you miss each other and you want to be together on a level, but the healthy changes haven't taken place to really be conducive of that being a positive situation yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this kind of interaction can happen with any kind of people, whether it's parents or siblings, anybody who's a little closer than just a regular person. You will always have this conflict of giving them more grace than you would give another person who's more strange to you, and then obviously becoming more vulnerable in the process. So all of these interactions really just kind of push us towards self-growth, to really learn how to self-love ourselves. When we feel hurt, it's really nobody else's fault other than ours. There's something that it resonates with inside of us, some sort of pain, some sort of unresolved emotional trauma that we are asked to deal with. And it can become overwhelming. Of course, when we're so vulnerable and we're only surrounded by people who only poke in our wounds, whether purposefully or not, whether they know they're doing it or not, we don't really have the choice or the chance to grow, to heal. So boundaries are there for us to know, okay, this is the space that I need in order to heal. And if another person cannot respect it, we just have to remove ourselves from them. Because this is really what boundaries are for. It's not what did you call it earlier, Jason?
Or barricades.
Yeah, or a barricade. It should be a boundary.
Not that safe place we're just going to hide away from.
Yeah. So what do you think are the differences between boundaries and barriers? I think there's a major difference there. How do you understand that?
Yeah, like a barrier or a barricade, it's more something you're kind of ducking under and hiding behind. It's not... A boundary lets you know how far you can go, what's safe, what's acceptable, how I'm going to let you treat me. And it's a safe kind of marker and a spot that says, okay, this is okay, but this is not okay, and this is where I lay down my barrier, or sorry, the B words are I have too many of them in my head, I guess, but the boundary is where you're saying, this is it, I'm not letting you disrespect me beyond this point, or I'm not letting you treat me like this because this is hurting me, this is disrespectful, this is not positive for my momentum, my growth. If you want to keep behaving like that, have at it, but I'm not going to be a part of it or have the contact there. Whereas if you just straight up set up a barricade or a barrier or something against somebody, it's more like you're blocking them out and you're looking at them as the enemy, and I want you on the other side of this wall, and I want to be safe and secure and not have any interaction, I guess, is kind of where you're taking that.
Yes, very important. I forgot who said it, but I can look it up later. I saw that on the internet somewhere. It said walls keep everybody out and boundaries teach people where the door is. Now, how to treat you just the right way, in a respectful and loving way, so they can come closer to you, to your heart, to your soul. And that's why boundaries are so important. You don't just want to keep everybody out. And this is very often what we end up doing. The more and more hurt we get, in order to protect ourselves, we just build up walls so that nobody can get in anymore. So we finally have some peace and quiet to heal. Whereas really it's important to learn how to establish boundaries. But in order to actually keep them in a way that doesn't hurt other people because they perceive it as a wall, we have to be in a place of self-empowerment and self-love already so that we feel confident in just saying, okay, I understand where you're coming from, or maybe I don't understand where you're coming from, but this is where I'm coming from. This is how far I'm going to let you do this, that, or the other thing, but no further, without actually lashing out at the other party. And that's, I think, what a really difficult thing is. Not knowing where the boundary is, not having been allowed ever to say no, then getting into a position where you're so vulnerable that you have no other choice in order to protect yourself to lash out. You'll have to lash out in order to let the other person know. And then all hell breaks loose. Because then the other person gets hurt, and then they lash out, and then, a vicious cycle can occur. So it is extremely important, I think, to know what your boundaries are, what is acceptable for you at any given moment, to be aware of that. So really to know yourself. Okay, this is what I'm feeling. This is probably why I'm feeling this. And this is what I need right now. And then have the courage and the empowerment to say no to certain things. And I realize a lot of people in our society have learned never to say no. It's rude to do. It's like, well, then if you don't do that, then you're rude to yourself. You don't want to be rude to yourself. If you want to know what we're talking about, then look at our past episode where we're talking about self-love. You have to love yourself first. Otherwise, you cannot genuinely love other people. You'll always be stuck in a codependent relationship where you need to love somebody else in order to feel love. But that's not really what twin flame relationships are about. You have to love yourself first and then vibrate at the same frequency to attract each other. And sometimes you can repel each other because you have healing to do, and sometimes you can come back together again.
Well, I think that's a good point. And being able to build those healthy boundaries along the way instead of, in my situation, it really got more towards we had catastrophic differences before we realized we needed to start putting some of these boundaries in place and recognizing that. Whereas, had we kind of gone along and been respecting and appreciating ourselves in the process, we could have made statements like, hey, when you block me, it hurts me, or when you are shutting me out, it's really hurting inside. And being able to have that conversation and express that and let somebody else know how they're affecting you with their actions or with their words, or it's that communication and it's that flow that as long as you have it and as long as you keep it going, you can establish boundaries in a safe manner. But once it gets to the point of one attacking the other, or to a level where there's just so much conflict, we tend to, I think, move more to the barrier and barricading aspect of, look, it's just too far. I need you out. I need you just go away for a while. Because there's so much pain and there's so much hurt and hurting aspect in there that we can't get out of our own crap enough to realize what we're doing to the other person or how we're acting and how it's getting confused in the process.
Yeah, you're right. And really this lashing out is actually an act of self-love. Not a well-informed or well-practiced one, and definitely not a productive one in the sense of, keeping a loving relationship flowing. But it is pretty much your soul just telling you, if you lash out, you'll get the other person to stop whatever they're doing that's hurting you right now. Again, it's not the elegant way, but it is actually an act of self-love, very unconscious one, obviously. But a lot of people do it, and they don't even realize that what it actually is. So whenever that does happen to you, when you're conscious enough and you know about boundaries, you might have even read up on that, and you still feel yourself going down that road in a conversation or a fight, an argument, and then suddenly you find yourself lashing out. It happens to the best of us, because somebody hit a point in you that you were not aware of, or that you were not prepared to have a healthy boundary for. It is always a good idea to just stop the conversation right then and there, not even necessarily apologize unless you actually mean it, and just retreat into a corner, literally, opposite corners, and take the time for yourself to become aware of what actually happened. Connect with those emotions, try and dig in, feel them, and see, okay, what is this trying to tell me? What can I possibly heal? What do I feel? Why did I lash out? How can I become more aware next time in a similar situation where my boundary might actually be? Because sometimes you're not even aware of where our boundary is. And that's what twin flame relationships are so lovely for. They really get to us. They really push us to learn what we don't yet know about ourselves. So thank you. But it's important to take the time apart instead of forcing it in a way that is so three-dimensional, where we just want to rationalize everything out. Like, okay, I want to understand this. Well, there's nothing to understand. Just sit with your emotions, because you cannot explain all sorts of emotions. They might come from a trauma that's so deep, it might be generational, or it might even be past life. How are you going to make your brain go to that point? You probably can't. And certainly not within that argument. You're just going to end up lashing out at each other more. So it's really important, I think, to take time apart, whether just for, a few hours or days or even months or years, depending on how much growth you need to do to figure things out, to actually heal those things within yourself. But learning about your own boundaries is always an ongoing issue with everybody, but especially so with your twin flame.
Yeah, for sure. And you make some really good points there that I think I don't think we often think of, because you were talking about, taking a step back and kind of looking at your own emotions and what all's going on, why this is activating something within you, why it's hit a nerve and something's going off within you. And in the heat of the moment, it's so easy to just get wrapped up in whatever the fight or the conversation or whatever the drama that's going on is, and either throw that on the other person or look at the external of what's going on in the moment, as opposed to, as you said, just having that wisdom, having that maturity to be able to say, okay, look, we need to put this on hold for a minute, and I just need some time that I can kind of meditate or get down, look within, and figure out, okay, why did what she say hit such a nerve deep in me that it's got me so ticked off I just want to block her out and not have anything to do with her. And I think that's an honestly great step to progress through that, is if we take that in that moment and say, okay, kind of back to the mirroring exercise that we talked about, it's honestly a lot of the same process of, okay, she's irritated me for this reason, and taking that and internalizing that and saying, okay, why am I irritated with myself that this has come up, and what is it in me that this is connecting to, or what nerves is this touching on? And doing that process of going in and really filling out where the source of that is, getting to the root of it and healing it and working on it.
It is absolutely important, and that is really all twin flame relationships is about, to push us towards ourselves, they keep throwing us back onto ourselves. I wrote a whole poem about that, actually. How lovely and blissful they are, and how they keep challenging us in this way. And this is why twin flame coaching is really valuable, because of the intensity of the relationship, it's so hard to figure things out. Like, how can it possibly be me? It's clear that it's the other person. Well, what we send out, we receive. So when the other person triggers us, it is a trigger within us, but it also goes the other way. So whatever is in us, which we don't even know, triggers something in the other person, which makes them do something or say something that then triggers us again. It's an interconnected universe. It's all energetic, as we know. So really, in the end, it's all us. With twin flames, it's just so much more intense because they are part of us in a way. But at the same time, we still have to separately deal with our things. And whenever we do, they're by necessity forced to deal with their own things, and vice versa. And that is, I think, why this phenomenon occurs, that twin flame relationships break up and then come back together, and then break up and then come back together, break up and come back together. It's exhausting until we learn that it is okay to take time out. It doesn't mean that you have to break up. It just means that you need time. And time is just a human concept anyway. It doesn't mean much. So just sit in separate corners, meditate, and then see where it goes from there. If you have to split up for good for a while, just that's okay. You know, you will always be interconnected on some level anyway. So it is not quite as sad as it seems to be sometimes, even though it feels like that. So it is all very intricate and complicated, but that's where energy work can help to actually get to the root of things, and where coaching can help you get some perspective on things. Because if you're caught up in a breakup and it's so horrid that every single fiber of your being hurts, talk to a twin flame coach, like me, for instance, and get some perspective and some healing. It is so valuable to progress through these phases.
Yeah, and you mentioned some good aspects there that I think you're right. It's with that deeper connection you've got with that twin flame, it's showing you how we are all connected, but it is such a relevant, deep connection that you can see there is something more to that oneness. There is something more to that connection, because inherently in that process you have okay, I start to work on things and get better, and she contacts me again, or you've got that pull and that connection that's just, in any other logical sense, it's just crazy, but it's that showing and that unfolding that we are all connected. There is a oneness to us all that without that kind of a relationship, some of us really can't fathom and understand and really rationalize. But when we have that relationship, we kind of feel these pulls and see these flows, even though we may not be in contact, or it may be days or weeks or months since we've last talked, but all of a sudden one or the other of us starts really doing our work and building, and it's like that connection's right there again, and you can kind of feel the other person and what they're going through, and all of a sudden it's like you turn the light switch back on, and it's kind of shocking in that process, or it can be for one or the other of you, because you may be kind of in your momentum and going, and you've kind of lost track or lost thought of the other person, but it's not necessarily the mental or the thought process that kicks in as much as that heart and soul kind of are like, hey, wait, here's this over here, and you're like, well, I'm working on me, we're good. But it's not. It doesn't really leave you alone. You can't just set it aside all the time as much as we would like to sometimes. Right.
And that's a blessing and a curse, as we said earlier. Yes, I think the big challenge that we have now in this time is to realize that we are individuals, that we are responsible for our own healing, but that everything we do and say and feel and vibrate affects everything else. I think a twin flame relationship is more than any other relationship the indicator for it to be true, because you cannot escape it. Once you found your twin flame, and if it's a true twin flame, this is what will keep occurring. As soon as you've established the boundary that might be so strong that you actually take some time apart from each other, as soon as one person starts healing, the other person will show up again until the next so-called crisis or whatever you want to call it. And then you might split again until everything balances out. As we've noticed in Earth time, one crisis was preceded by another crisis, which was pretty much the opposite, whether it was a civil rights movement or whatever. Or another way to describe it is things get worse before they get better. So at some point, however, the equilibrium will establish itself. So a twin flame relationship is the same way, because there are couples out there who have figured it out, who have this perfect balance going on, where, if somebody gets a bit off scale, they just know what to do in order to get back into an equilibrium instead of just going, woo, like some of us still do. But that's all a learning process. That's what we're here for on Earth. And that can be fun if we enjoy it. You look doubtful. You look really doubtful, Jason.
Well, I think, like you say, it's definitely more inspiring to do your work. It's past relationships, I can't see a place where I clearly defined my boundaries or, put any of that in place. But with what I'm having to go through with her and the issues that have come up, it's one of those places that, okay, I'm going to have to put these boundaries in place, otherwise we're going to reach a point where I really don't ever want to have any contact with her again. And that's not really healthy or safe to any degree. I mean, there's no reason that any of us should reach a point with any other individual or human being that we really just want you to F off and, not have any contact with us again. And realizing that those are, the internal issues and the things we haven't dealt with, the things we haven't worked with, it's those indicators, those keys, those little triggers that are telling us, hey, that you really want to grow? Here's something you need to work on. Here's that next step you've been asking for. Why don't you look at this thing that feels like a nerve going off in you or pain inside of you and feel into that pain, go into that pain, and, like I say, find the source, get to the root of it. Don't, I hear energy workers talk about cutting cords. When you cut a cord, cords can grow back. When you get down to the root of an issue and pull it by its roots and heal that root issue, more than likely you're not going to experience that again unless you submit yourself to those same vibrations and pull it back in. But when you get to the root of it, you remove it. When you cut a cord, you don't really disconnect from it. You temporarily give yourself a break from it, but you're not getting to the root of the issue. And that's the whole point in progressing, is you have to get to the root of the issue and heal it and make a positive, progressive path moving forward, so you don't fall back into those patterns and issues that you've experienced in your past.
Which is unlikely you do once you actually pull the root, because you will vibrate differently and you will attract different things into your life. If you don't heal the issue, you will attract similar things and exacerbate the emotional trauma. Whereas when you start healing yourself, so-called better things will start showing up in your life, and it will become easier to heal that way, because you have pulled the root and you have attracted different things into your life. But there might still be similar things that then ask you to be aware. Simply be self-aware. Don't beat yourself up over the fact that you attracted that. There might just be another aspect to it, or another aspect to the wisdom that you were supposed to get from it that you haven't quite gotten yet. So I think self-forgiveness is an important thing, which is something maybe we can talk about in the new year. Forgiving oneself, not just forgiving the other person, but forgiving oneself. But one more thing that I wanted to say here, which I now forgot. Anyway, it'll come to me in like a second probably. You were talking about roots and chords, and yes, and I wanted to encourage everybody. That is it. Not just a self-forgiveness, but that's connected. I wanted to encourage everybody that we wouldn't be with a twin flame, or we wouldn't be even looking or contemplating a twin flame, looking for a twin flame or contemplating a twin flame, unless we were aware enough already of how energy works, of how soul connections work, aware of how you self work, of the fact that you have emotional things going on that you need to heal. If you did not have this awareness, you would not be watching this. So I just wanted to commend everybody who is actually watching this and give you encouragement that even though you may or may not be facing difficulties right now with your twin flame, or struggling to, keep a twin flame relationship alive, or just have lost one or whatever, you wouldn't be here unless you had a certain level of awareness already. Because as you said earlier, Jason, it keeps pushing us back to ourselves, and we have to keep looking deep. And we never want to get to the point where we just completely condemn another person and wish them out of our lives. And we are the kind of people who would never do that. We pull the emergency cord before we get to a point where we lash out so badly that we would lose all contact with our twin flame. We know that. We'd never do that. So what we do instead is do all sorts of things that keep us safe. Like I said earlier, with our self-love, our lashing out possibly, but we'll always have an avenue of reconnecting somehow or another. Because with this high level of consciousness, we will always find a way to forgive, to move forward, to heal, not just with the other person, but with ourselves as well. So even though there might be pain coming up, it is really just an indication for your level of consciousness. It's already so high, and it's such a light in this world that shows other people how to interact with other people as well. Whether it's twin flames or not, doesn't matter. But actually to come from this higher place of unconditional love for yourself and for the other, that you would simply not do certain things that are so destructive, that one of the things that you mentioned, that you would just push a person out completely and leave him on the side to die somewhere, whether physically or mentally or emotionally. You just wouldn't do that. And that's why I keep coming back with your twin flame, because you always know when enough is enough. So really, you kind of all know what your boundaries are. You're just being made aware of them because you have this higher consciousness already.
Yeah, and I definitely believe that aspect there of it's teaching you what unconditional love is, and that's something we don't understand really in modern society, especially because there is so much of that. It's definitely not unconditional love, what we experience for the most part in the world around us. It's, I love you if you're doing this for me, or I love you given that this, and that are remaining the same and balanced, then we're good and we love each other. But it's acclimating, it's moving to that next level of an unconditional love that is so out of our normal understanding and social paradigm, I guess, of how we're kind of taught to interact, and that is where some of those establishing some of your boundaries is handy, because it's not right for anybody to be taken advantage of. And if you're not being treated well, if you're being manipulated, if that's not unconditional love from either side. I mean, you've got to love and respect yourself enough to at least be able and establish and, make some form of communication that, hey, this isn't the positive unconditional love that we're supposed to be having flowing here. This is hurting me, or this isn't positive for our growth together. And making the effort to make those communications that, hey, this is causing a rift in us, or this is causing a resentment to build between us, before it actually becomes that resentment, and early enough in that process that you can say, hey, there's really something not right with how we're communicating. Is it how I'm interpreting this? Is this what you really meant? Am I just often misinterpreting, or is there something that I've hurt you and it's causing you to lash back at me this way? And it's that level of communication and that understanding, and not only that self-respect, but that respect for the other person, to be able to say, hey, I'm having issues here, I'm having trouble here, and I don't know if it's me, I don't know if it's the communication, I don't know if it's you, but there's something we need to look at here, because this isn't making me feel positive and moving us in a positive place.
Wow, seems like a whole new topic to talk about. Unconditional love, forgiveness, how does that interact with boundaries? Would you like to talk about that in the new year, though?
That sounds good. I think we've definitely spurred up some new conversations, some forgiveness and possibly gratitude aspects, and New Year. Gratitude's definitely a good one to kind of get into in a new year. Get into a good, positive, grateful kind of spirit and attitude going into the new year.
Sounds absolutely awesome. Well, I look forward to our conversations in the new year. Meanwhile, everybody, again, please send us your questions on our YouTube channels or Facebook channels. Got plenty of channels. We even have a newsletter to subscribe to, where we'll just send out the dates, or if we have any particular offers of meditations or coaching offers. You can find all the information on our website. Our website is listed on the YouTube channel. Please share as much as you can. We'd appreciate you sharing, spreading the word. And I hope this helps you get some clarity. We're really blessed that you're watching, and thank you so much, Jason, for joining me. It's always fun. Really.
Thank you. Yes, always a great time. Wishing everybody a safe and happy New Year's.
Yes, exactly. So, today's the 31st, isn't it? So, Happy New Year. Stay safe inside you. Go deep inside, know who you are. This is how I stay safe. And then we'll see you again next Monday.
Sounds good. See you then.
Wonderful. Take care, Jason. Bye, everybody.